In the face of great challenges this year, Americans showed incredible grit, strength, tenacity, and resolve, and together we achieved truly historic victories like nobody ever thought possible. To defeat the China virus, we launched the largest mobilization since World War II. We transformed our factories to build tens of thousands of ventilators and millions of masks virtually overnight. Nobody thought it could be done. We ignored the experts who demanded open borders, and we shut down travel from China and Europe to protect our citizens, and we built the wall. We pioneered groundbreaking new therapies and treatments, and we saved millions of American lives. Over and over again, we were told it would be impossible to deliver a vaccine by the end of the year. All of the experts said, absolutely unthinkable. Trump is exaggerating. It can't happen. And we did it long before the end of the year. They said it would take a medical miracle, and that's exactly what it is. Years from now, they'll be talking about it. They'll be talking about this great, great thing that we did with the vaccines. A truly unprecedented, amazing medical miracle. Normally, developing a vaccine takes up to 10 years. Thanks to Operation Warp Speed, we developed a vaccine in just 9 months. We've already begun a nationwide vaccination program, and we're sending the vaccine all over the world. The world will benefit, we'll benefit, and everybody's calling to thank me. Our most vulnerable citizens are already receiving the vaccine, and millions of doses are quickly being shipped all across our country. By early next year, the vaccine will be available to every American, and shortly thereafter, it will be delivered worldwide. We will end the pandemic once and for all. This is one of the most extraordinary scientific, industrial, and medical feats in history. Everybody has it as that. That's what they're marketed down as. And we can never let people forget where it came from and how it came. We're very proud to be honored, and all of the people that worked so hard on it, we have to be remembered for what's been done. I want to thank all of the workers, scientists, doctors, and members of the military who helped make Operation Warp Speed possible. Before the pandemic, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. Now we are doing it again. We've actually built, if you think about it, 2 great economies, before and after. We passed $3 trillion in relief, the largest financial aid package in history. Through the Paycheck Protection Program, we saved or supported more than 51 million American jobs, and we're doing numbers now like nobody's ever seen before, including having the highest stock market in the history of the world. I froze student loan payments, stopped evictions, suspended payroll taxes. We have slashed the unemployment rate from 14.7% all the way down to 6.7%, and a lot of people thought that the 14.7 could be 32 or 40 or 45%. And now we're down to 6.7 and heading a lot lower. We made it dramatically better than experts predicted just a few months ago. Our economy is growing at the most rapid rate ever recorded, 33.4% last quarter, and much faster than the nations of Europe. Nobody can compete with us in terms of going down less and going up by far the fastest and the best. Whenever America is challenged, we always rise to the occasion. We are bringing critical medical manufacturing back home to America. We have secured our borders and paused immigration to protect American workers. We lowered drug prices for the first time in 51 years. And after years of endless foreign wars, we are signing historic peace deals in the Middle East. It's all ending in the Middle East. We have to hope it keeps going. It's so easy if you know what you're doing. In this season of joy, Americans have so much to be grateful for. We're all blessed to live in the greatest country ever to exist on the face of the earth, and we have made it greater than ever before. As long as we remain loyal to our nation, devoted to our citizens, and faithful to Almighty God, we know that the best is yet to come. God bless you, and God bless America.
Hey, folks. Thanks for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Today, I don't normally get political on my shows. For a while, I haven't done that. Don't intend to really today, but we are going to discuss the current events. And today, when I say we, I mean my Marine brother, Holland and I. And really great guy, has good opinions. On some things we differ, but on most things we sort of collide in agreement. And, we're just going to try to fill you in on what we heard in that speech. And by the way, I can guarantee both of us will say the same thing. So take us on one thing, vaccinations. Take a seat on my big orange couch. Grab yourself a coffee, tea, soda, and adult libation. How is life going today there, Holland?
Well, it's very exciting, to say the least. I woke up this morning to a bunch of messages and a bunch of news, and 2020 has been a colossal year in American history, and it's definitely going out with a bang.
With that, we agree, and this will be kind of an end-of-the-year wrap-up. But a positive one, but also we're going to discuss some things that might be a little disturbing. First thing, let's get this out of the way, that the one thing I'm sure Holland, as a great American, will agree with is vaccinations are like drugs to me. Okay? And I take them. I don't have a problem with them, and I'm sure Holland doesn't, because he's had them thrown in his body in the Marine Corps. And a lot of experimental ones with me. Anthrax, taking paradostostamine bromide. I get the negative effects because I've had them. And that's during the Gulf War. But just like with marijuana, we used to say peer pressure all the time, right? You can't peer pressure somebody. Well, when I was a young man at 14, I tried marijuana. It put me to sleep. I don't know and don't care if anybody uses it, but I just never thought for that $2 joint I could buy a 6-pack of beer. Schaefer's beer at the time, that was a Ohio beer. And I would have had a good time at the party. Instead, I fell asleep on the couch and missed the entire party. If it was this day and age, people would have been drawing dicks on my face and it'd be all over the internet. Thank God the internet didn't exist. Your thoughts on that there, Holland?
Well, I'm not going to address the dicks on the internet, but yeah, the vaccine, I was in the Marine Corps and I had plenty of vaccines pumped in my body. Really had little choice about it. When the anthrax vaccine came along, I thought about trying to refuse it, but I was in the Persian Gulf at the time. And I went out to the top deck of the boat I was on to consider my options, and I saw some dead sheep floating by. I was like, oh, maybe I should take the anthrax vaccine. So as for the vaccine that's happening today, it can be discussed apart from the whole vaccine issue, which is another topic. And the vaccine that's being distributed today for the COVID-19 virus, first of all, besides side effects and lack of testing and no long-term trial period, there's no proof it works. I mean, there a report just came out this morning that a nurse who received the vaccine a week ago just tested positive for COVID-19. Again, so do we even know that this thing works? And like I said to people out there who are considering, I understand if the nature of your revenue and income and the support of your family depends upon you taking this vaccine. I understand that. And I'm not going to disparage you for taking it. But for those of us who have a choice, I would highly advise sitting the first round out and seeing how this goes. Just see how it goes before you jump in.
With that, I got to agree, and we do still have autonomy on our bodies. You brought that up before the show, and it's really truthful. First off, I'm 52, and going on 53, and coming up quick too, bruh. These years just keep going by faster and faster, and the people are at risk. We know the risk factors now. There are people in their 70s, way older than I am. And I have COPD from smoking. And I'm at a risk factor, but I can't wear a mask because it interferes with my breathing ability. And so I'm the guy that goes into the store and has to hold up his little thing and say Americans with Disabilities Act. But I'm still not as bad, at least in my mind, and thinking I don't need to take it yet. But nobody should be able to force you or peer pressure you into taking any drug, including something that might be helpful. Maybe the vaccine works, maybe it doesn't. We don't know. But we've seen some side effects that are somewhat normal, sometimes not normal. We do know that much. And I think an informed decision and giving informed consent is just as viable with the vaccines as it is, let's say, if I got somebody other than my wife drunk and tried to take advantage of her, I'd be a dirtbag, or I slipped a Mickey in her drink. I'm still that dirtbag, and she can't give conscious advice, consent to let me, horse around with her. And nor would I do that even to my own wife. So yeah, man, I think, does that ring true with you on just the subject of the vaccines and other things?
Well, my body, my choice. We do enjoy medical freedom, and as consenting adults, we should be able to decide whether or not we take in an experimental vaccine or not. The problem is going to be in the future is if here in America, I know they're already talking about this in Europe and other countries where there is no freedom. Here in this country, if they're going to allow us to travel, to conduct business without the vaccine, and hopefully that issue, if it is enforced, certainly it will be under a Biden regime, if that can be challenged in the courts, because forcing people to take a vaccine that has not even been thoroughly tested is about as un-American as it gets.
With that, I agree, my brother. With that, I agree. And, if I have to, because of the nature of my work, if I have to take a vaccine, I'll probably take it, but it's wasted on me when you could give it to an older person that maybe is afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it. That really is the juxtaposition. Everybody I've known who's had it has come out fine. It was less than, it's a flu. It's a real thing. There's nobody denying that it's real. It is in my opinion, and I'm the foremost expert on one thing, my own opinion. It's kind of informed because of what my brothers have told me. But it was de facto, whether anybody wants to say it or not, a bioweapons release. And what I mean by that, it wasn't made to be a bioweapon, or maybe it was. I don't know. But what I do know is the CCP, the China folks, decided to let everybody from that province fly around everywhere around the world except within China. So there was no intra-China travel from that province. And from what I also know during that time is China's economy was about to go under, and probably still is. And I think this was their play to make all of our economies go down. Your thoughts on that?
They didn't want to be the only ones. They didn't want to be the only one with the virus, and its release during the election year of the president that they're trying to topple cannot be a coincidence. And if anything, whatever the star alignments may be affecting 2020, in 2020, there are no coincidences. Okay, there are none in that year. And the year is over in a very few short hours, and we'll see what 2021 brings. I think it has to be better. It has to be better. Or if not, it'll at least be more exciting. It'll certainly not be dreary. So I do believe it was a bioweapon. I do believe it was released with intent on China, by China. And just as the killer stabs himself to remove his own implication in the crime, China cannot be the only one who did not suffer. They had to suffer themselves, but they really didn't suffer. The world suffered. The world economy suffered. This country suffered. And in President Trump's second term, which I still firmly believe will happen, I do believe China will be held to account. And that may get kinetic. We may see some action, but I've done an extensive study of the Chinese military, and that is not going to be too daunting of a task. The last thing China wants is a military confrontation with the United States. They're so vulnerable, and one reason I believe that they strive for so many asymmetric ends for their own agenda is because they are so militarily vulnerable.
And I agree with you on that completely. The one thing I do know is they're 1.8 billion, and yet India is 1.6 or 7, maybe 5 billion, and they're having a border war right now. Folks don't even know that. And a Chinese battalion got ruthlessly murdered by the Indians in that conflict. And that just happened a few months back. So, you know, I'm not even impressed with their troops. Kung Fu movies aren't real, folks. So that's just something that you might want to take into effect. It still does matter, some size, some effort. But I guess we've kicked China in this vaccine and our thoughts on that, and it's probably going to come up again. But what else did you take away from that speech, brother?
Well, that's one. Trump is not done. He has no intention of giving up power as long as he thinks he's cheated. And that, you know, once he has a mandate, once he can establish that he did win the election in a landslide, which he did, he will have a mandate in order to affect the MAGA agenda. And that is something they wanted to rob him of. From the very beginning, with his first election, with this one, they could not allow him to win with a landslide and have a mandate from heaven to affect the MAGA agenda and the America First agenda. And that's not to the exclusion of the world. He's doing the world a favor, okay? The world is being guided into a global corporatist slave shopping mall by the Davos Group and the World Economic Forum and their tool, the UN, to benefit corporate interests, not human rights interests. You know, nationalism is not hate. Nationalism is celebrating one's own society and the society that reared you and valuing that of others. I don't want the world to be the same. I want it to be different. I want diversity. I want cultures to be different from one another. I don't want a homogenous world civilization, so-called, that can be thrown under the control of Big Brother.
Brother, I saw that in real time back during the Cold War. East Germany, you guys can go look this up. Don't believe me. Research it yourself. East Germany, Honecker and Milke and all those clowns that ran that. And remember, nobody can ever forget that Angela Merkel, she was FDJ, that's their youth group, their communist youth group, and she's East German. She is she's actually a physicist, trained, okay, through a German rigorous college. Whether it was East or West Germans, they put out good people that knew their shit, and that's for real. And a lot of former East German Stasi and stuff, when this first kicked, decided to travel globally for a reason. And then we started having the BLM riots. We started having the Antifa outbreak, and everybody forgets anti-racist action and all of that. That stems from former East Germans. And then the tech people, they always forget about Schmidt. Eric Schmidt, his family has East German ties. That's all I can say on that. So even the guy who ran Google. And people also forget, guess what? Just ceremoniously you can find this out. Unless they decide after hearing this and several other programs I've done on this, that Google wanted to make their headquarters in old East Germany, in the Stasi headquarters, and I'm not joking. Mm-hmm. And the head of Google's office was going to be on the second floor, just like Milke's office, because it was going to be Milke's office. If you don't know who Eric Milke is, look him up. He was Stasi leader. He was the guy, when you see the movie In the Lives of Others, you will understand who he is. And what that movie was based upon was how Stasi ruthlessly, does this sound familiar, would disintegrate you from society. Disintegration was the actual term. And that means that you are not socially viable. And what are the Chinese doing? And wait, another thing. Why do we have the Chinese over here? Well, the Chinese come up again, don't they? When they brought over the Confucian schools and how many professors and everybody else they co-opted, including Leiden's son and probably Leiden. And that's my opinion, and as I state, I'm the foremost expert on one thing only. My opinion. Your thoughts?
Yes. And the Chinese Communist Party is engaged in a multi-generational program to co-opt, compromise, blackmail, extort, and control the political system of the United States through its politicians. We see that culminating in the criminal corruption of the Biden family. We have Hunter Biden documented entering into business arrangements with Communist Party spy chiefs and cavorting with Communist Party supplied hookers and Communist Party supplied drugs. And we're supposed to expect that this is not being used to control the Biden family, who is poised to achieve the highest office in the land when there are blackmail tapes on them. Come on. It would be criminal malfeasance, misfeasance, negligence for Trump to concede the office that he was cheated from to a traitor, to someone who has literally sold out his country for money and for influence and for power and for hookers and drugs. Okay? That is the choice we have. That is the choice Trump faces, and I'm confident he will make the right one. And all of his choices remain legal. What's going to happen on January 6th, if the vote is going to be contested on the floor of Congress, you're going to have the largest rally probably in the history of D.C. happening there. You're going to have the national vote contested on the floor of Congress, and we're going to see the mother of all political storms happening. So 2020 is ending out with a bang, and 2021 is going to open up with a bang. So it's going to be very exciting.
Oh yes, it will be. That's a matter of fact. Another unique thing, I was thinking about it while you were saying, the one, not one person, but there were several senators and congressmen that were pushing for all 3 years since Trump got elected. He never had a moment of peace, right? And now they're going to worry about Leiden. I don't call him by that first name because that's not who he is. He's a fraudulent person since the get-jump. How does one serve in 47 years and have to take Amtrak every day to go to the Senate, or every week to go down there and do his job in the Senate and the Congress and everywhere else he's been? A swamp creature for sure. How does that person become a multi-millionaire? It's funny. I've seen that a lot since Clinton. And you said something very fascinating earlier, too, about the corporatocracy jumping in bed with the politicians. I noticed that they used to say back in the day when I was a young man, and that's why I was a Democrat, when I was young, very young, because, it was communist light. But that's a whole different story. I don't want to get into it. The Democrat was for the working man, and the Republicans were all country club Republicans and in the bed of big business. And yet, under Clinton, one thing did happen. He corporatized the Democrat Party, and then when violence comes out and all this stuff we got to go through Bush W and Bush Sr. too. You just saw them build this racist scenario that first started when they said that George Bush Sr. had that man dragged behind a truck in Texas, if memory serves. They tried to make it like Bush said that was a good thing. No, he didn't. And then when Biden brought that up, it didn't clue me in until your comment, because he said they want to put you back in chains. And I'm thinking, nobody's putting anybody in chains except for the Democrats. The Democrat governors have everything on lockdown for everybody. You're self-imprisoning. That's not, you can't freely associate. You have no freedom of speech because of the corporations of Google, Facebook, YouTube. You can't really assemble in this space. That's a fact. And so what does that mean? I think that means fascism. What's your thoughts on that, brother?
Well, they're invoking this false paradigm that somehow, that the opposition to Biden and the Democrats is race-based. And they're invoking opposition to government policy as hate crime, as hate speech. We're seeing that on the corporate level with the censoring of speech through the internet platforms controlled by big tech, censoring public political speech under the guise of calling it hate speech, and therefore a hate crime. And this is basically trying to demonize the First Amendment. The siren call of Antifa these days, and I never thought I would see this, is that free speech is hate speech. They're saying that. Why would they do that? Why would you want the government controlling your speech, deciding what is good, approved speech and what is disapproved speech? That is fascism. So we have fascism being introduced under the guise of anti-fascism. Just because they adopt the name anti-fascism, anti-fascista, does not mean they're against fascism. They're actually communists. The first Antifa organization in pre-World War II Germany was called Antifa, had the Antifa flag, the same symbol they use now, and it was a communist organization. They just labeled themselves as anti-fascist to try to attract the mainstream. But it was through and through a communist organization, and Antifa today is through and through a communist organization. And you see East German influence in the training and tactics being used. The Stasi, who are well known, practiced at the art of censoring society, imposing self-censorship through fear of estrangement from one's family and fellows, and gaslighting those who do not play along, and labeling those who do not play along in their thought as hate criminals, as fascists, and therefore you can do anything to them. They have no rights. And you see all of these themes and memes being invoked to play to fears, to play to prejudices, to play to partisan politics. And frankly, we should all be free to disagree. Hate speech is free speech. Free speech is hate speech, and both should be allowed.
Oh, I agree.
Let the marketplace of ideas, seize the high ground, not some government bureaucrats and some big tech corporate executives deciding what we say.
Brother, I agree with you wholeheartedly. My whole purpose and thought on this, and I'm going to be very frank and honest, is I can't remember the justice's name, but he said it was during the Scotchie March, I think it was, where actual neo, and they were neo because, when people call people Nazis, it's a joke because the Nazis are all dead now. But the Scotchie March in Illinois, that justice that came down, and it was, believe this or not, folks always forget that it was a leftist organization, a legal organization that went to bat for them because it was about free speech. And the justice said the most abhorrent speech, the Constitution does not protect speech everybody agrees with. It protects the most abhorrent speech. So that's kind of the point of freedom of speech. They say you can't yell fire in a theater. Yeah, you can. If the theater's on fire. You can't induce panic. You can't say, go hurt this person. Go do this. Go do that. That's what you can't do. You can't say, go after them. But you notice they have no problem when they dock somebody, tongue firmly in cheek with them, saying, you know what? You might want to go visit this address where this person lives. That's direct intimidation and a direct threat. Your thoughts on that?
Exactly. The thing is, we must bear the consequences of too much freedom if we're to enjoy freedom at all. Freedom is not comfortable. Freedom is dealing with the consequences of too much liberty. As Jefferson said, he would bear the consequences of too much liberty than none at all. There are plenty of people I disagree with. There are plenty of people that I think are whatevers. But I certainly don't want them thrown in jail for it. And I certainly don't want everyone thinking alike. How boring is that? The best ideas come to realization through the marketplace of ideas, through the contest of wills, of intellect, not by government bureaucrats deciding which speech we can have and which we cannot, not by big tech corporate executives deciding by committee which speech we can have and which we cannot, or in the case of Twitter, drug-addicted, blackmailed degenerates deciding that they're only going to favor one political party. So we must always bear the consequences of too much liberty in speech and freedom of action and freedom of our bodies and all of it in order to enjoy it at all. Life is not supposed to be easy. It is a struggle. It is not supposed to be a kindergarten playground, being controlled by the teacher. We need to be able to converse and throw our ideas at each other without fear of criminal sanction. You can suffer the sanction of unpopular opinion, but should be your freedom to have an unpopular opinion. You must remember that some of the very best, if not most of the very best ideas in the world started out as very unpopular. So it is a very dangerous road to go down in terms of science, in terms of freedom of thought, anything, to start saying that, a government committee should decide what we should say or not say, what idea we should propagate or not propagate, because progress will be stifled. Progress that could save lives.
Oh, exactly, brother. I mean, those men that pledged their lives, their fortune, and sacred honors that drafted our Constitution and that drafted our Bill of Rights, those men pledged everything because it was real to them. And what's the old saying? Hard men are built during hard times. And I'm sure those men were very hard after the French and Indian War and us colonists being used as pawns in that one. I know Washington was, definitely. And many other Americans. And they knew what war looked like. And when they all decided, you know what? We're going to send this to good old King George. And we're going to have ourselves a fine insurrection right now. And we're going to let him know, in word and in deed, that we're no longer going to be under the thumb of England. They exercised free speech. And they were also willing to take the consequences therein. And they don't report how many of our people who signed that Declaration of Independence died. They were people had their wives taken. People had wives and children die over this. Just
property confiscated, their fortunes scattered to the winds.
Yep.
Those men were pledging everything. They were disputing the crown and making a historical break with tradition to form their own country based upon an idea rather than an accident of history, an accident of conquest. They were forming a country based upon the ideas of the Enlightenment, on the ideas of ancient democracy and the ancient republics, that they had a right to self-determination in the face of tyranny, and they knew that if they lost, all of them would hang from a gibbet. But they didn't. But some did die. most suffered, but because of their bravery, sacrifice, and their ability to manage risk, to suffer risk, we are enjoying those freedoms today that are once again in dispute. And if we are to retain those freedoms so heartily fought for us, so heartily risked for us, we must be willing to undertake the same risks, the same hardships, the same sufferings. And if we do prevail, which I do believe we will, we can once again bestow upon our children and grandchildren the freedoms that have been passed down to us.
I agree wholeheartedly. One of the funny things when you said that made me remember a brother of mine, Blackie, that's the name he went by. He was an Irishman who served as an RMP, and we're brothers to this day. We went to visit him back in '05, and great guy. And his wife and kids, we met all of them. And here's the beautiful thing. He goes, "You want to go see the house where Washington was born in London?" And it was a long drive if we would have decided to go from where we were at. And anyways, I'm not going to say the town. But anyways, I said, nah. He goes, yeah, the house exists. He was born in England. A lot of people don't know that. The early colonists were born in England. And that's why they had that thing put into the Constitution that you have to be born in America or have been born before America and living. It means the soil and the blood, of blood and soil. I know that sounds like German crap from the 30s, 40s, 20s, whatever. But no, that actually is, it's in soli, and the other term is of blood, and of soli is blood, and I can't remember what the Latin term is, or soil, and blood, I can't remember the Latin term for it. But those were the two phrases that they had, and that's why us being a generous people have allowed anchor babies to retain citizenship. But see, the problem with our citizenship is it has been so diluted that they can bring over grandmothers, great-grandmothers, great-grandfathers, people that can't work, not just maybe moms and dads. Moms and dads, I get. Maybe an uncle or an aunt if they were significant. But there's just no real vetting of that. And that's kind of a problem. And that's the only reason I bring that up is because of my time with CBP. So, anyways, that's Mox Nix. But, yeah, that's just something that really shook me in 2005 when he said, "You want to go see the place where Washington was born?" I was like, he was born in Virginia. No, he wasn't. He came to Virginia. That's something a lot of our history books don't point out, brother.
Yes, and many of them were from families that were fleeing religious and political tyranny in England, seeking freedom in a new land, in the colonies, the freedom to forge their own destiny, free from political prosecution for their beliefs. This is prior to the English Civil War and so forth, the cavalier class, which George Washington and the Virginia planters were part of, fleeing England in the aftermath of the English Civil War, because they would face persecution at home. And even before the English Civil War, the Cromwell people coming to America to flee their own brand of political prosecution, they were suffering. So America was formed and founded on dissent from political tyranny, not on conforming to the dictates of government bureaucrats who are intent on suppressing their political and religious freedoms, which we're seeing today. We're seeing all of that. We're seeing COVID-19 being used to take away our freedoms, all of them. Freedom to associate, freedom to worship, freedom to speak, freedom to conduct business, commerce, freedom to celebrate families with your holidays. Who is benefiting from the curtailment of freedoms in the wake of COVID-19? And you must note that it is in the states where they have mask mandates and draconian lockdowns, those states seem to be suffering the worst. These measures that are curtailing freedoms do not seem to be alleviating the virus, only curtailing our freedoms. So one must ask, what is going on and what is the purpose behind that?
Well, I believe it's a coup, in my own opinion. I believe it's all traitorous. Like I said, I think I talked to you about it offline or maybe in one of the shows. I have a flag that flew over the state House of Representatives for the state of Ohio that drove out, believe this or not, by a state representative by the name of Mike DeWine, who is now our sitting governor. And he always had a guaranteed amount of votes from my house because of that. And when all of a sudden he put Ohio, now this is a Republican, but he's a rhino now. He's proved it, and he's a swamp creature. And I believe this. Like George Voinovich and several other governors we've had, both left and right, I judge the people not by the party. I'm not going to be tribal. I judge them by what they do and what they've done. And he decided to put us under a mask mandate. He decided to say this, that, and the other. We have a curfew, too, by the way, which I violated joyfully. Because London, where I live, we have a beautiful thing called London Lights, and the people still had the lights up, so did the businesses. But what we used to do, this is back pre-COVID, think about this kind of thing. At 6 o'clock, there'd be horse-drawn carriages and sleighs if there was snow on the ground. And the citizens of our town could ride around. So with due protest, I invited friends over, and we went out after dark, brother, and we enjoyed London Lights. And you know what? I posted it in the city of London, the pictures and stuff, but you know they didn't post that on the official page because of the way I worded it. I said, barring anything, our town at least has freedom. No cops stopped us. Nobody worried us. We're a small town. And it's not that small that people think, but it's 14,000 people, and it's a very heavily Republican town. And they're not rhinos that live here. There are some Democrats, and you can tell who's from out of town by simply going to Kroger. And the old people, I understand, wearing masks and everything. But the people who live in the town, no, not so much. We had a Kroger manager that decided to have a problem with me one day, and I just called up Kroger and complained on her. That's what you do. You know, and she was a Karen, dude, trust me. I wouldn't have done it. I thought she was an employee, and I wasn't going to say anything, and a brother of mine who works there goes, no, that's the manager. And I said, oh, cool. That means I will complain on her then. She's not from our town. You know, don't come here carpet bagging. You know what I mean, brother? And I'm going to go grab a soda real quick, so roll with it as long as you want. Your thoughts on it. Are you there? Are you there?